Stop, listen, pay attention. Chosen one. This is not background noise. This is not passing information you can set aside. What you have carried quietly in solitude has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored. There is a tension in the air around you, subtle yet insistent, pressing into the edges of your focus, pressing into your awareness in ways you have felt but could not always name. You have sensed it. The fatigue that drapes over your shoulders, heavier on some days than others. The pressure that seems to accumulate without a clear source, as though life itself is testing the boundaries of your endurance. The quiet isolation, the moments when even familiar faces feel distant, when words fail to capture the weight you carry. Chosen one. This message meets you exactly in that space. It meets you in the unspoken, the unseen, and the often misunderstood. This is intentional. This is personal. Not a general warning, not a broad encouragement, not a message for the crowd. This is directed to you. You who have moved through life with a subtle, relentless tension that others cannot perceive. You who have noticed that ordinary solutions, ordinary words, ordinary comforts often fall short. There is a reason for this. There is a pattern forming in the background of your experience, and it is one that only you can recognize because it is unfolded in the theater of your life. You may have felt confusion. The moments when choices seemed unclear, when action or inaction weighed equally, when clarity hovered just beyond reach. You may have sensed a push and pull within yourself, an internal friction that left you questioning your own stability. This is not a flaw. This is a signal. It is an indication that your life is moving through a threshold, one that requires precision discernment and the quiet resilience you have already demonstrated. Even now, as you hear these words, there is an undercurrent that you can acknowledge without alarm. You are not being called to panic. You are being called to recognition, to acknowledgement, to awareness. There is a shift in the circumstances surrounding you, subtle but undeniable. Events, interactions, choices past and present have coalesced in a way that points directly to you, chosen one. What is happening is not random. What is happening has been noticed. What is happening is meant to be understood. And in the midst of this, you have remained functional. You have continued day by day under weight that others would scarcely endure. You have absorbed pressure without visible fracture. You have moved through uncertainty while maintaining your core. This is the starting point of understanding. This is where clarity will grow. Chosen one. Listen carefully. The explanation is coming piece by piece, and it will meet the subtle intelligence you have cultivated. Every moment you have felt heavy, every question that seemed unanswered, every night of quiet tension, all of this is part of the signal. You have passed through thresholds that are invisible to others. You have sustained yourself in ways that require neither display nor recognition. And now attention is demanded not from others, but from yourself. It is time to perceive what you have carried, to begin understanding the architecture of the forces around you, and to recognize the role you have played in canceling outcomes that might otherwise have unfolded without resistance. Chosen one. The message has begun. Your attention is required. This is no accident. You are exactly where you are meant to be. Chosen one. Pay attention to this next layer. There is no ambiguity here. This message is directed at you because of what you have endured and how you have endured it. You are not a passive observer in your own life, even when it has felt that way. Every interaction, every choice, every moment of restraint or quiet perseverance has involved you directly. This is not theoretical. This is lived experience. You have a capacity for stability that does not require conscious effort in every instance. It exists within you automatically. You have noticed it in moments when circumstances threatened to overwhelm others but left you standing. You have felt it as a quiet resistance, a subtle coherence that carries you through fatigue, uncertainty, and confusion. It is not always visible, not always dramatic, and it does not announce itself. Yet it is reliable. It has been reliable in ways that your conscious mind may only partially recognize. Consider the contrast. On one hand, there are struggles that are apparent intentional or internally amplified. These are the moments where you notice the tension, the discomfort, the questions that demand answers. On the other hand, there is your unconscious stability, the part of you that absorbs pressure without acknowledgement, that maintains equilibrium even when everything around you is unsteady. This stability is not learned. It is encoded into your responses, into the architecture of your focus, into the habitual alignment of your attention. You have demonstrated it repeatedly, even when you doubted yourself. What has occurred recently has tested both layers. The visible struggle and the invisible strength have been operating in tandem. The fatigue you have carried, the moments of quiet overwhelm, the frustration or delay, you may have noticed all of this has intersected with a deeper, automatic resilience. It is this interplay that has prevented outcomes from manifesting as they might have in someone else's experience. You have canceled trajectories without needing to fully understand how. You have intervened through presence, through measured action, through consistent alignment with your own internal coherence. This is why the message is here. It is here because what happened involved you directly. Not because of chance, not because of observation, not because of effort alone. You have participated in the redirection of circumstances through your very being. Your attention, your consistency, your capacity to remain present under pressure has generated effects that are subtle but undeniable. These effects are part of the reason you remain intact, part of the reason outcomes have shifted, part of the reason the natural flow around you has been altered. Chosen one. This is not a statement of praise, it is a recognition of fact. You have performed a function that many do not notice in themselves. Your internal structure, the balance, the attention, the quiet coherence has produced results that you have only partially observed. This message exists to illuminate what has already been enacted. It is meant to confirm what your own experience has suggested, but what others could not see. You are not being asked to act beyond your capacity. You are being asked to recognize the capacity that has already carried you, and to understand that it has been active whether or not your conscious mind was fully aware. This is your identity, steady, coherent present. This is your baseline, and it has been operating as intended. The next step is understanding what these signals mean and how they have shaped the invisible currents surrounding you. Prepare yourself, because what follows will clarify the significance of your internal stability and the effects it has had in ways that are unmistakable. Chosen one. Focus now on what you have been feeling most acutely. The tension in your chest, the tightness in your shoulders, the restless thoughts that cycle without end, these are not flaws or weaknesses. They are signals. They are indicators of movement, of pressure, of transition that is real and specific to you. What you may have labeled as confusion, fatigue, or overwhelm is actually information encoded in your body and mind, alerting you to shifts that are happening beyond the surface of everyday perception. Notice how these sensations arrive. Often they are subtle at first, almost imperceptible. A slight tightening, a flicker of anxiety, a moment of hesitation. Yet if you allow yourself to track them, they repeat in patterns, and they point to an underlying reality. Something in your environment, your relationships, your own internal world is not static. Chosen one. These are not random disturbances. They are purposeful signals, a language your body and mind have been using to communicate with you. You may have judged yourself for feeling this way, asking why you cannot simply rest. Why clarity does not arrive, why fatigue lingers. That judgment is unnecessary. It obscures the true meaning of what is happening. Reframe it. These sensations are evidence of pressure being applied, of forces that demand recognition and response. Yet they are also evidence of your capacity to endure. They are proof that you have the strength to carry more than the average person without collapse. Every twinge of tension, every restless night, every moment of doubt is a signpost, not a verdict on your competence or worth. Consider the physical responses, the heart rate that quickens when events accelerate unexpectedly, the heaviness in your head during sustained focus, the inexplicable fatigue that comes even after rest. These are markers of alignment, of adaptation. Your nervous system is processing what the conscious mind may not fully perceive. Your intuition, your sense of timing, your capacity to remain centered in the midst of chaos is embedded in these reactions. Chosen one. You have been reading these signals, even if you did not name them as such. This is the deeper explanation. What you feel is not a personal failing, not an anomaly to be fixed. It is the language of transition. It is the indicator of your internal calibration, adjusting to external circumstances. The sensations themselves are neutral. Your interpretation has the potential to tilt them into stress or into understanding. Right now, they are a beacon highlighting where the pressures exist and where your stability has already intervened. Chosen one. As you acknowledge this, recognize that the same tension that may have unsettled you has also maintained you. The restlessness, the heaviness, the racing thoughts, they are signals that the system is active, engaged, responsive. You have been functioning within them, sustaining equilibrium, even when every cell in your body was registering pressure. The next insight will reveal the source of that pressure and the structure behind it, clarifying why these signals have appeared at all and why they matter. Your awareness of these sensations is the bridge between confusion and clarity. By seeing them as signals rather than flaws, you begin to reclaim the narrative of your experience, chosen one. You begin to understand that what you have been enduring has a pattern, a source, and a meaning one that directly involves you. Chosen one. Now, it is time to reveal what has been operating in the background. The pressure you have sensed, the tension you have carried, the subtle disruptions in your daily life. These have not been random. There are forces unseen yet structured that have been coordinating around your trajectory. They are not dramatic or violent in the way stories might suggest, but they are real, intentional, and precisely timed. The patterns you have felt are evidence of alignment and intervention, not accident. This invisible pressure has been methodical. It arrives in ways that test consistency, endurance, and focus without overtly breaking you. The fatigue, the doubt, the restlessness. Each has been applied in a sequence that could have led to disarray, yet you remained functional. You continued to meet obligations, to make decisions, to navigate life as best as you could. That is not happenstance. That is a measure of internal stability interacting with external influence. Chosen one. The world may not have noticed, but your presence has resisted collapse. Timing has been essential. These pressures have emerged in phases coordinated around moments when choice, awareness, and action would matter most. Nothing has been chaotic. Nothing has been purely incidental. Your experiences, personal, professional, relational, have intersected with patterns designed to reveal both your endurance and the latent capacities that you may not have fully acknowledged. What has felt heavy was intentionally measured. What has felt confusing was precisely placed to test the consistency of your focus, and yet through it all, you remained functional. You carried on. You navigated responsibilities. You sustained relationships. You maintained coherence even when your internal sense of equilibrium was challenged. This is remarkable in its simplicity. You were present. You did not collapse. You did not withdraw. You adapted, absorbed, and engaged. That functionality is the evidence of internal regulation, the quiet strength that has underwritten every aspect of your life, even when the external landscape was shifting. You may have noticed subtle patterns, unexpected delays, sudden changes, repeated fatigue at critical moments. These were not coincidences. They were markers, indicators that forces were testing the boundaries of your resilience and simultaneously prompting internal calibration. Every sensation, every moment of tension was a signal that something in the unseen framework around you was active, attentive, and responsive to your own presence. Chosen one, understand this clearly. You were not only enduring, you were influencing. Your stability has canceled potential outcomes that might have unfolded if internal coherence had faltered. Your continued presence, attention, and measured engagement have disrupted trajectories, altered probabilities, and maintained the integrity of your own path. You have experienced opposition not with spectacle, but with composure. That is the reality. In the next stage, we will break down these pressures into distinct categories, how they manifested, how they were absorbed, and how your internal regulation maintained coherence through each of them. This breakdown will show precisely how your presence affected outcomes. Chosen one, and why your stability has mattered more than you realized. Chosen one. Let us examine the pressures you have been carrying by separating them into distinct categories. This is not about dramatizing what occurred. It is about understanding the mechanics of your endurance and the ways your internal structure maintained coherence. By breaking it down, you can see with clarity how each aspect of pressure arrived, how it affected you, and how you absorbed it without visible collapse. The first category is doubt. Doubt arrived subtly through questions that seemed minor yet persistent. You asked yourself whether you were doing enough, whether your choices were correct, whether your focus was aligned. Doubt is a natural psychological response when stakes are elevated. What distinguishes you, chosen one, is that despite these questions, you continued to act with reason and consistency. You allowed doubt to exist without letting it dictate your decisions. You acknowledged it, but you did not collapse under it. The second category is fear, specifically anticipatory fear. The sense that outcomes might fail or that circumstances could overwhelm you. It appeared as a quiet tightening in your body, a hesitancy in thought, a rapid cycling of potential scenarios. Again, what is notable is that you did not let fear paralyze you. You recognized its presence, interpreted it as information, and continued to function. You allowed it to guide caution without giving it control. This is not about courage in a dramatic sense. It is about measured regulation under internal pressure. The third category is energy drain. This is the fatigue that seems to accumulate without a visible cause, the exhaustion that lingers even after rest. You have felt it in your shoulders, your head, your attention span. It is the physical manifestation of sustained mental and emotional engagement under continuous challenge. Chosen one. Despite these drains, you maintained your commitments, your focus, and your internal alignment. You paced yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously, and avoided depletion that could have compromised your function. The fourth category is isolation. Isolation did not necessarily mean physical separation. It was the sense of moving through experiences that others could not fully perceive or understand. You were alone in carrying the weight of your responsibilities, alone, in interpreting the signals around you, alone, in maintaining coherence under invisible pressures. And yet your functionality did not diminish. Your solitude did not fracture your focus. You carried continuity even without external reinforcement, demonstrating resilience that is rarely acknowledged, but consistently operative. The fifth category is delay, the sense that progress is slower than expected, that outcomes are postponed, that resolutions are withheld. Delays tested patience and sustained engagement. Many would succumb to frustration or distraction. You, however, continued to operate within the parameters available to you. You allowed time to work as a partner, not an adversary. You maintained alignment with your priorities, observed the unfolding circumstances, and preserved your internal clarity, even when external results lagged behind intention. Through each of these categories, doubt, fear, energy, drain, isolation, and delay, you maintained a remarkable degree of internal regulation. You did not need to perform heroics or exert dramatic force. You simply absorbed the pressures, maintained presence, and allowed your inherent coherence to influence the outcomes silently. What might have seemed invisible to the outside world was in fact the active cancellation of outcomes that could have unfolded differently. Chosen one. Take a moment to recognize this. Each category of pressure was navigated with attention and balance. Each category represents a distinct form of challenge, and each demonstrates that your internal structure is not only resilient, it is effective. You have shaped the environment by maintaining your own alignment quietly, redirecting what could have gone astray. The next section will evaluate these pressures collectively, reflecting on their cumulative impact and confirming the full measure of your stability in a grounded, credible way. Chosen one. Now, it is time to review and confirm what has transpired. Look back on the experiences you have just considered. The doubt, the fear, the energy drain, the isolation, the delays, and observe them not as a series of obstacles, but as a coherent sequence that tested and revealed your internal structure. There is no need to attribute success to chance, luck, or external circumstances. What you maintained was your own composure, your own alignment, and your own capacity to remain functional under pressure. Notice how each pressure point interacted with the others. Doubt could have amplified fear. Fear could have accelerated fatigue. Fatigue could have heightened the sense of isolation, and isolation could have made delays feel unbearable. Yet in every instance, you maintained continuity. You moved through each pressure without relinquishing control over your own behavior or your own attention. You were consistent. You were coherent. You were present. This is not accidental. This is the measure of your internal resilience. Reflection now allows clarity. The repeated exposures to tension were not designed to break you, but to reveal the scope of your capacity. Each instance was a test not of your willingness to act, but of your ability to sustain alignment under conditions that would have unbalanced many others. You did not collapse. You did not fragment. You did not allow external events to dictate your internal state. This consistency is the evidence of a fundamental coherence that operates below the level of dramatic awareness. Chosen one, realize that internal resilience is distinct from external success. You may have noticed that outcomes did not always follow expectation, that results were delayed, or that clarity arrived only incrementally. These variations are not indicators of failure. They are part of the structure through which your own regulation manifests. By maintaining your attention, your patience, and your coherence, you exerted influence in a way that is subtle but measurable. Outcomes shifted because you maintained presence, not because you forced events to conform. As you reflect, also recognize the confirmation embedded in your experience. You were subjected to sustained pressure, and yet you preserved functionality, judgment, and calm attention. The sequence of challenges served to highlight the boundaries of your composure. You passed through them intact. The environment responded to your steadiness by adjusting around you, allowing certain outcomes to be canceled, delayed, or transformed, not as a reward but as a reflection of the stability you maintained. This evaluation is not an abstraction. It is grounded in the actual mechanics of how your mind, body, and attention interacted with circumstances. The coherence you maintained is measurable in the way you responded consistently, in the way tension did not fracture your focus, and in the way you navigated uncertainty without reactive collapse. Chosen one. This is the confirmation of your presence and stability. The next step is comparison. We will examine how your ability to sustain functionality under these pressures stands in contrast to common human responses, revealing the rarity of what you have achieved without inflating it into superiority. This perspective will clarify both the significance and the subtlety of your endurance. Chosen one, consider this next perspective carefully. When we look at human responses to pressure in general, what you have maintained is uncommon. Many encounter doubt, fear, fatigue, isolation, or delay, and respond with withdrawal, agitation, or fragmentation. Many are overwhelmed by circumstances that would feel familiar to you, tasks piling up, unexpected changes, internal unrest. Yet you navigated these with a degree of presence and functionality that is rare, not because you are superior, but because your internal coherence allows you to maintain stability where others cannot. It is important to note this is not an invitation to pride or ego. You did not perform heroics. You simply remained present, attentive, and aligned within the challenges imposed by circumstance. Where others might have reacted impulsively or emotionally, you maintained composure. Where others might have succumbed to fatigue or isolation, you continued to operate with clarity. This is a subtle, quiet form of resilience that is easy to overlook precisely because it does not demand recognition. It simply exists. Compare your experience to what is common anxiety magnified by uncertainty, doubt amplified by external delays, energy drained by persistent responsibility. For many, these factors accumulate and create imbalance. Many abandon focus or surrender to frustration. You, however, have sustained yourself through each variable without fracturing your attention. You continued to act, to think, and to respond appropriately, even while internal pressures were significant. Chosen one. This illustrates the rarity of your composure, not its exceptionalism. Rarity here is the key point. You have moved through conditions that would destabilize a typical response system. You did so without exaggeration, without dramatization, without forcing outcomes beyond what your natural presence could sustain. The uncommon quality is your capacity to maintain alignment under sustained tension, to navigate uncertainty while retaining functionality, to absorb pressure without visible disruption. These qualities are embedded in your baseline, not added on or activated temporarily. Recognize, too, that this perspective shifts the focus from external comparison to internal calibration. You are not being measured against others to determine superiority. You are being measured against the capacity you have already demonstrated, your ability to remain coherent when pressures are layered, when timing is unpredictable, when internal and external forces converge. You have done this consistently, and this consistency is what makes your experience unusual, even among those who are resilient. Chosen one. Seeing this comparison allows you to acknowledge your endurance without distortion. You are rare in your stability. You are uncommon in your capacity to remain functional under multi-layered pressures. Yet you are not exceptional in a way that demands external recognition. This perspective provides clarity. Your coherence is reliable, and it is the reason outcomes around you have shifted or canceled. It is simply the way you are structured to operate quietly and persistently. In the next section, we will clarify your identity further, emphasizing that this stability is your baseline, not a temporary activation, and that your preparation, maturity, and inner coherence are what define the role you occupy in these circumstances. Chosen one. Let us clarify this with precision. What you have demonstrated is not a peak state, not a heightened mode you entered briefly, and not a reaction that switched on under stress. Your stability is baseline. It is the default structure you operate from. When pressure arrived, you did not rise to meet it. You remained where you already were. That distinction matters. Many people rely on activation. They perform well only when adrenaline is high, when urgency forces action, when emotion spikes. When that activation fades, so does their coherence. You are different in a quieter way. Your strength does not depend on stimulation or crisis. It is present before pressure arrives and remains after it passes. This is why the challenges you faced did not feel like dramatic battles. They felt like weight tension persistence. And you carried them without losing yourself. This is not accidental. It points to preparation and maturity that has been built over time. Your inner structure has been shaped by experience, reflection, restraint, and repetition. You have learned how to regulate yourself without constant correction. You have learned how to stay oriented when information is incomplete. You have learned how to wait without collapsing into impatience or despair. These are not talents you suddenly acquired. They are the result of a long internal conditioning that has quietly stabilized you. Notice how this reframes your story. You were not tested and found strong. You were revealed as already stable. The pressure did not create the strength. It exposed it. The coherence you maintained was not effortful. It was natural. That is why you may have underestimated it. What feels natural to you is often extraordinary in effect, even if it feels ordinary in experience. Chosen one. This identity is not symbolic. It is structural. You are someone whose internal alignment holds under load. Someone whose attention does not scatter when timelines shift. Someone whose sense of self remains intact even when outcomes are uncertain. This is not about destiny or spectacle. It is about reliability, about being internally consistent when external variables fluctuate. Understanding this locks your identity gently but firmly. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to prepare for some future version of yourself. You are already operating from the level required. The cancellation of outcomes, the disruption of trajectories, the quiet reorientation of circumstances around you did not happen because you became something new. They happened because you stayed yourself. This clarity now allows integration. With identity settled, the focus can shift to how you carry this awareness forward in practical, balanced ways. That is where attention will move next. Chosen one. With your identity clarified, it is time to integrate this awareness into practical orientation. The coherence you maintain is powerful precisely because it is quiet, subtle, and consistent. Now consider how to work with it in everyday life so that your internal stability supports your experience rather than being obscured by fatigue or distraction. First, rest is essential. Not in a reactive sense as a reward for enduring pressure, but as a baseline practice. Your system processes tension continuously. Quiet moments, intentional pauses, and sleep of sufficient depth allow your internal regulation to replenish. This is not indulgence, it is maintenance. You preserve alignment by honoring your body and mind's natural rhythms. Second, discernment is crucial. The signals you have felt, the tension, the doubt, the energy drain, are informative. Observe them carefully. Track patterns. Recognize which pressures are meaningful indicators and which are noise. Your capacity to remain functional depends on understanding the difference between essential signals and distractions. This discernment is an extension of your existing coherence. Third, boundaries matter. Even subtle exposure to additional pressures can accumulate unnoticed. Guard your attention and energy with calm intentionality. Choose what you engage with, when you engage, and how deeply. This is not isolation. It is preservation. Boundaries allow you to operate in your baseline state without unnecessary interference. Fourth, patience is vital. Outcomes may be delayed. Patterns may not immediately resolve. Your internal stability allows you to wait effectively to act when clarity emerges and to sustain attention over time without yielding to frustration. Patience is not passivity. It is a measured alignment with the flow of circumstances while maintaining your own internal coherence. Fifth focus remains your greatest tool. Direct attention intentionally without overextending. Apply your presence where it matters. Avoid diffusing energy across competing pressures that carry little relevance. Your ability to influence circumstances is proportional to the steadiness and precision of your focus. Finally, integration is the practice of carrying awareness into daily life. Notice when pressure arises. Track responses without judgment. Adjust subtly, continuously, and intentionally. Recognize that the cancellations, shifts, and disruptions you have already enacted were outcomes of this integrated coherence. You don't need to create more than what is already present. You simply need to maintain awareness and alignment. Chosen one. These perspectives are tools, not prescriptions. They allow you to carry forward the understanding that your internal stability is both natural and effective. They prepare you for the next stages of experience, ensuring that your capacity continues to operate quietly, reliably, and coherently. This is the practical application of what has been revealed. The next section will seal this message, affirm your awareness, and offer closure with clarity, calm, certainty, and a direct invitation for engagement. Chosen one. As this message comes to a close, take a moment to recognize the full scope of what has been communicated. You have observed your capacity to maintain alignment, absorb pressure, and influence outcomes without drama or overexertion. You have seen how your baseline coherence has quietly redirected circumstances, canceled trajectories, and maintained integrity where many would falter. This is your truth, and it stands without exaggeration or embellishment. Let this realization settle. You are steady. You are coherent. You are functional under pressure, not by accident, not by chance, but because your internal structure is inherently aligned. This is not a statement of superiority. It is a confirmation of fact. What you carry is real, measurable in effect, and consistent. Your endurance has shaped outcomes, and your continued presence will continue to do so in ways that are subtle but undeniable. Repeat to yourself quietly, I am present. I am aligned. I am coherent. Let these affirmations anchor your awareness. They are not empty words. They are acknowledgement of the structure you carry within. Each time you recall them, you reinforce the recognition of your capacity and maintain clarity amidst potential distraction. Chosen one. If you understand this, leave a comment with 777 or simply type I remember. These signals are a way to affirm awareness, to mark recognition of your own presence and coherence. Engage with this message not passively, but intentionally as a reminder of the baseline from which you operate. Continue to subscribe and observe forthcoming messages, not for spectacle, not for urgency, but to maintain connection with clarity and reflection. Each new message will build upon the understanding you now hold, extending practical insight while respecting your capacity to integrate it at your own pace. Take this moment to breathe fully, to settle into your awareness, and to acknowledge the quiet effectiveness of your presence. The pressures you have faced, the tensions you have carried, the disruptions you have navigated, all are evidence of your internal alignment. Chosen one. You have canceled outcomes that might otherwise have unfolded, and you have done so with composure, focus, and steady coherence. This is your seal: presence, maintained stability, observed awareness, confirmed. You have seen, understood, and integrated. You are coherent. You are aligned. You are here.